Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the Freebirth Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Today, we have my dear friend Amelia, who shares her story of her spiritual journey into motherhood. After becoming sober and meeting her husband, Amelia embarks on a conscious conception journey that brings in her first son. After being mistreated by her midwives, she found the courage to critique her birth experience and began the deep discovery process of what it could mean to take 100% responsibility in her next pregnancy.
I guess my mothering journey begins when I was 5 years old and my mum was pregnant with my little brother, who's my only blood sibling. I have a 10-year-old half-sister who I didn't grow up with. But she was driving in the car and I was sitting in the back, and all of a sudden I started making sounds like, ah. My mom was saying, Amelia, what's happening? Are you okay back there? I was like, I'm having the baby. And I gave birth in the back to my doll. And
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And it was a beautiful moment. And I refused to go to school after that the next day because I needed to stay home to feed my baby, obviously. And my mom was like, I promise you, Amelia, I'll feed the baby. Whenever the baby's hungry, I'm going to feed them. It's all good. And I just said, no, you won't. And I really, really was so set on staying with my baby. And eventually my mum persuaded me. But that really was my first mothering experience. And then I always wanted to be a mother. That was like my dream of, what do you want to be when you're older? I want to be a mother. And so I just really carried that in my heart, waiting for my time. And I met my husband, my now husband, Luke, when I was 18 years old. And he was 7 years older, and I was 18 in an AA meeting him. I was like 30 days sober and complete mess. And he had about 7 years sober at that time. And we weren't, like, all odds were stacked against us, but we, and his sponsor was like, you're 13th stepping her. Like, the odds of this working are less than winning the lottery, whatever. Anyway, we pushed through and we made it work. And we moved to LA. We lived there for 4 years, from London to there, and then moved back because we knew we wanted to start a family and get married first. And my family live in London, so do his. And so we really wanted to grow up with that kind of nuclear family extended around us. So we were both completely on the same track. I was 26 when, before I got pregnant. And by the way, every year I was saying to Luke, is this the year? Can we do it this year? Please, I'm so ready. And he was like, no, not this year, next year. And I remember on January 1st, 2017, I literally turned to him and I was like, you said next year. Do you know what I'm going to ask you? And he was like, you're going to ask if we can start trying for a baby now. I was like, yes. I remember we were watching Modern Family on the projector and, and I was just like, oh my God. So we started trying for a baby with Modern Family in tow. And it's funny because he's watching Modern Family right now as we speak.
Oh my God.
Just by chance.
Full circle, Luke.
Many years later. Yeah. But so we started trying for a baby. We had been preparing our bodies for months beforehand, just because. Actually, were we? I was. He wasn't yet. And so he started, cutting out sugar, coffee, anything with chemicals, doing the whole, protocol, taking lots of nourishing supplements and foods and herbs.
It's so romantic, huh?
Yeah, it is actually.
It really is. You'll never take a supplement more romantically than when you're preparing for a baby.
Well, I remember you told me about, this was my second pregnancy, but about the Supreme Creation supplement for men. And that was, he felt like Zeus taking that. Like, it lives up to its name, basically.
Oh my God. Johnny said the exact same thing. He used to come in the morning and like flex and be like, I am Supreme Creation.
It's some powerful shit. It's like deer antler, goat placenta, all sorts of stuff in there. I'm actually going to get him some. Again, we're not trying for a baby, but I think he could, do with the boost.
Right? I'm glad you brought that up because I had completely forgotten about that. I got to reintroduce that into the family supplements.
So we prepared, and I was doing my big kind of spiritual preparation because I knew that in January, January 20th, I was all booked in to go across the world and fly to Gabon, which is in West Central Africa, to do a Bwiti initiation with the plant iboga that I had been in ceremony with for the past, 6 years. I had been using this plant, and it had completely transformed my life from being just a complete wreck and, you name it, I had the problem, to really discovering my essential nature. And it really led me on this path. So I was so excited to finally have been given the green light to go and do this initiation, because not anyone could go. You had to be really able to hold it. It was a really strong experience. You're in a chamber, in a hut, in Libreville, Gabon. It's just out of this world, the situation. And for a week. And so I was so excited. I go there and I have this absolutely life-changing experience. One of the visions of which during the week, I saw myself giving birth to this little baby who looked just like me when I was born. So I assumed that I was having a girl because it looked just like me. And I knew, and they all told me, the master there and everyone, they said, you are going to get pregnant right away when you get home. And I was like, okay, great. He said, you just wait and see, your stomach's going to start growing. And that's that. So I go home and literally a week later, I get pregnant. And I was like, wow, this is so powerful, having just watched myself give birth in the chamber. And I can't divulge too much because it is a sacred kind of protected experience. But it was a really, really powerful vision that I had had. And anyway, so I go through my pregnancy, kind of like, what do I do now? I knew 100% that I was going to have a home birth because when we were living in LA, I watched this film, The Business of Being Born, the Ricky Lake one. And that started me on my kind of passion and obsession for birth and natural birth and against anti-establishment birth. And I had an amazing osteopath in LA as well, Dr. Monks, who he was a chiropractor actually, who opened my eyes about toxins and vaccines, and just really taught me stuff that I had no idea about before. So he was a big part of my preconception journey, because it was 2 years before I conceived that I started doing the protocol that he had recommended. And so I was just ready to rumble and so excited to be pregnant, and just in complete kind of shock that my time was now, after a whole lifetime of, wishing to be a mother and dreaming of it. And so I went to, so I had a pap smear before I got pregnant, because I still thought pap smears were a good idea. I didn't know about that until what I know now. And so I went to see my gynecologist, who I had seen when I was 18, and this was almost 10 years later, and she's a really lovely lady, and we'd had a good rapport, and she gave me the results of my pap smear when I went in pregnant, because she knew that I was trying to get pregnant and excited about it. And she didn't know that I'd gotten pregnant so quickly. And she said, well, the results are you've got HPV again, because I'd had it before, and I'd had severe dyscaloriosis, whatever it's called, and the colposcopy, and the cells burnt out. And by the way, I had always thought that I wouldn't be able to get pregnant because of all of this stuff and some other stuff I'd been told by her that made me carry around this thing. Oh, and apparently I had polycystic ovaries, which I don't have. And just this whole narrative that I had about myself, that I, would find it hard to get pregnant. I knew I would, but it would be maybe a struggle. So I turn up to my appointment and I'm like, Miss Rose, I'm pregnant. And she's like, oh, wow, okay. And she then went on to recommend that I have a colposcopy done pregnant, to cut the cells, to first examine, and then if needed, cut out the cells. And I could risk losing my pregnancy, but it was more important because I'd be, putting myself at risk. Otherwise I could get cancer and all these things. And this is me like 4 weeks pregnant or whatever. So I was kind of scared about that, but I just said, there's no way in hell I'm doing that. And I just said, I'll take the risk. I'm not coming back. And so I didn't. And I knew in my gut there was no way I was doing it. So
were you able to kind of shake that off? Like once you have this clarity, you're like, no, F that. And then you move on with your pregnancy. But how does that, like that, you're contending with a lot of stories there, right? That's kind of a lot in the beginning of your pregnancy. Were you able to just like shake it off and be like, that's BS? Or was it was there a thread that continued on of fear or worry?
So I was lucky in that I had a great support network of people who I really trusted their spiritual input from. And so I did ask my friend who was linked with the initiations, and she's considered a master in Gabon, even though she's French, but she lives in London. And I asked her if she would, feel into it for me, and is this right? Like, does this feel right to her? It felt right to me, but I needed the validation because I was vulnerable, and I needed someone to say, yeah, okay, what you're doing is okay. If I didn't have that, I would have probably carried that through, being who I was in that moment. But she said, no, you could lose the baby, don't do it. If you want to, check afterwards. And I did, by the way, check afterwards, and there was nothing there. It was a complete false reading the first time, or the cells had been sloughed away in the birth or whatever.
That's what I was going to say, that we also kind of can so easily forget, well, especially in like the deep misogyny of our culture, that pregnancy can be incredibly healing. Yeah. And it can actually regenerate and, for lack of a better word, fix, or no, I'll say heal, things that are going on. So obviously I don't know what was like real with this situation in particular, but that book, Everything Below the Waist by Jennifer Block talks quite a bit about the regenerative essence of pregnancy. And it's I think this is quite a beautiful example of that.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I 100% knew in my gut, even though I had the doubt and, needed the affirmation from my friend. Ultimately, I knew that giving birth would get rid of it if there was something there. So, yeah, I'm very grateful that I didn't listen to the doctor. And then I never went back to a doctor after that. And when the gynecologist in that meeting had asked me, so what hospital, what obstetrician are you going to? I said, I'm having a home birth. And she kind of scoffed at me. She was like, oh, really? I was like, yeah, I am. Her husband is an obstetrician, and he was my mother's obstetrician for my brother's birth.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. So anyway, I left there, and then I was like, right, I need to find a midwife. I know for a fact I'm not going to go through the NHS. I'm not going to play Russian roulette with who turned my house. I have a very intimate relationship with whoever's going to be there, and it needs to be the same person. And I need to feel, so I was very clear about it. I mean, I'd read Gentle Birth, Gentle Mothering. Oh, I forgot to say as well, the year prior, I had done a hypnobirthing teacher training. Not because I wanted to teach, but because I wanted to learn. I wanted to have an antenatal kind of more alternative education, which they offered, like from a teacher's standpoint. And so I learned all about, vitamin K and advocating for self and all of the resources that I had in the UK. And when it came time, I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. I need to find an independent midwife. I need to stay away from XYZ, and I need to really protect my space. So I was obsessed with birth. Literally, I would just talk about it to anyone and everyone, and they didn't want to hear about it. But, I was just like super keen. And okay, so the time comes that I am searching. My friend, two separate friends recommend to me this midwife. And she used two separate names. She had the same first name, but different last names, because one was her married name and one was her maiden name. And so I thought it was two people with the same name. And I'm emailing her on one name and calling her and texting her on the other name. And we arranged to meet up, and I was like, realized I double booked because I thought I'd booked both.
Oh, that's funny.
Midwives. And so
she was like, you're crazy.
Yeah, literally. So she shows up, and we just hit it off straight away. I really trusted her. She had a really motherly quality to her. She was very open to my experiences with spirituality, with the fact I'd just come back from Gabon. She had done Cambo, and so she understood kind of doing more out there practices. And we hit it off. And I said, yeah, I feel really good about it. Luke met her. Luke liked her too, but Luke was like, listen, do whatever you want. I'm going to preface this to say that I knew about Freebirth. I had found Lacey Haynes's Instagram just randomly and saw that she was pregnant. She was like 8 months pregnant at this point, and talking about how she hadn't had any ultrasounds, and which I knew nothing about before then. And, having a wild pregnancy for the most part. And I was like, oh my God, this girl is crazy. I love it. I need to learn more. And so I was kind of really interested in following her posts. And I said to Luke, we could do this ourselves. We could free birth. It would be amazing. We'd save, £6,000 as well, because we don't need anyone else. And Luke was totally game. He was like, yeah, let's do it. Then I spoke to a couple of friends, and I was like, older friends who've had 4 babies and, very naturally minded on most things. My friend was like, yeah, I think you should have someone there. Just have someone there that can, help out if needed and if anything goes wrong. And
if it were only that simple.
I know. And so my confidence was really easily knocked. I wasn't standing, in my power around it. I was very easily persuaded. Literally, it didn't take much persuading. I just was like, okay, I guess this time, because I found someone so great that I love, then I'm going to go with her. So,
well, and it, like the way someone being like, well, it's really nice to have a woman to just help out. Like, that's legit. That sounds very easy to kind of reduce what the experience is going to be to something that innocent, So, I mean, obviously I know you know that, but this is kind of the, this is like the smoke and mirrors of it. That's so unfortunate.
And I thought as well that I thought I was really doing my research and making sure I had an independent midwife who's all about undisturbed birth this, undisturbed birth that. I'm like, yeah, great. Like, only had one client who's had a C-section in the 40 years that she's been practicing, doesn't believe in induction, doesn't believe in, all the things that I quizzed her about at the beginning that I felt really strongly about. No vaginal examinations, all of it. So I was like, okay, I feel like, how could this go wrong? I've got this great lady. We're on the same page. It's wonderful. So anyway, then I'm 5 months pregnant and I am meditating and I get a vision. Well, first of all, I was at a group meditation with a bunch of friends. I mean, it was like our Monday night meditation meetup that we did at my friend's beautiful house. And it was like a really nice situation. And we go there and like the whole ceiling is lit with stars, like fake stars embedded into the ceiling of the meditation room. It's like really a special place. And one of my friends, Tunde, arrives, and she is this lady that can touch a crystal and go and I don't know. I don't even know what she does. It's just wild. She will like explode or internally combust just from like communicating and touching crystals. I don't have any experience with that, but I've seen her do it and it's really intense. Anyway, I see her for the first time in a while. She's been to Gabon as well before and done this initiation. So we're kind of sisters on this, in this way. We hug. She starts like shaking. And there's been this energy transfer from my womb into her stomach. And she's like crying. I mean, it was so intense. I was like, what is going on? Because I wasn't experiencing it the way that she was. But she was like, this is really, really powerful. I've never experienced this in my life. And she has to go lie down and then the meditation starts anyway. My friend guides it. And I close my eyes and I get transported up into the cosmos and then back to Gabon outside this jasmine bush outside the chamber that I was last in, which is the chamber to meet your highest self. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful experience being there. But pregnant mothers go when they're 8 months pregnant, usually 6 to 8 months pregnant, go and do the initiation for their unborn child, this very special initiation. And I was taken there by my baby and I was told, you need to take me here. And I had just been 5 months earlier. And it was so intense and it was so something you're like, okay, maybe in a few years I'd consider it again.
Totally.
Like completely humbling, completely breaks you, completely does, reconfigures every cell in your body. And no one was planning to go. I'd gone with a group of friends before. So I speak to my friend who I've spoken to about the HPV cells. I was like, I have this vision. What do you think? Do I need to go? And she was like, yeah, I think it would be good.
Like, are you sure?
What? So 6 months pregnant. And also getting a visa to go to Gabon and doing the whole thing is nearly impossible. It is such a palaver to get it done. And I honestly, until like a week before I went in that January, the first time, I didn't think I was going to be able to go because they're such sticklers. They don't let people go there really. So it was the easiest, breeziest way to get a visa and book my tickets, and every door opened for me. It was green lights all the way to get there, and I cried the whole plane journey, 6 months pregnant, because
oh my God,
I didn't check my bag in, and I had all my like pregnant snacks to bring with me in my apple puree pouches and everything. And the guy at TSA confiscated it all from me because it was too much liquids, and I just like burst into tears in front of him, and then continued crying for the whole flight. Watching some crappy movie, just like,
did you like want to go?
I was like, this is my first sacrifice as a mother. Like, I'm experiencing it. I did not want to go. I knew it was the right thing to do, and I knew that I needed to go. And I wasn't going for myself. I was going for my son, who I knew it was a boy, because I did the test at 11 weeks, the harmony test.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as I said, I didn't know about ultrasounds really. I'd heard through the grapevine that it, maybe wasn't the best thing, but I tried Googling it. I couldn't find any information. And I just, to be fair, was really controlling and wanted to know what sex my baby was going to be. And that was that. So I went in for the ultrasound at 11 weeks. Sorry to go back a bit, but I felt pain in my womb when I was having the ultrasound. I knew that it was not okay. It just, every part of me turned away from it. And I asked her to stop it. She just had to check to see if it was twins or not before she could do the harmony test. And anyway, it was one day, and I was sure I was going to have a girl, but we knew his name straight away. Before we found out even, we knew he was going to be Sage, or a girl Sage. And so I take little Sage Christopher off to Gabon and have such a difficult week. Oh my God. And there's a digital clock in the chamber. I don't know why. I mean, it's...
that's weird.
There's a digital clock there. And I felt like I was in prison because I spent the whole time looking at the clock. Like, okay, and doing like tallies on my notebook. Okay, you've got 10 more minutes until this hour is finished. I felt like I was in prison. It was so difficult.
You kind of were. I mean, minus the part that it was voluntary, but like... That's obviously a huge distinction here. But I mean, going into a chamber of solitary confinement, essentially, just staring at a clock. I mean, I don't think you get clocks in prison, but...
And not just solitary confinement, though, because there was one Gabonese girl doing the initiation as well, who was 9 years old. So I was in there with her. And there was a woman who was my age with her 8-month-old baby doing the initiation.
And you're in different chambers or the same chamber?
We're in the same chamber. It's like one big, very kind of minimal room. And
but you're all on... Sorry. You're all on the medicine, so it's not like you're talking and hanging out.
No, you're not. So it's such high vibration, and it's like a very clear ritual, the way that it's done, that it's not really about the plant. It's about the mystical process that you are going through. And some people don't even get given the plant. It's whatever the spirit says. Like that person, no, she doesn't need the plant. He doesn't need the plant. He needs 3 handfuls. He needs 5, whatever. And I was given a symbolic dose. So I didn't feel anything, and I was given it, halfway through my experience. But you are having the most, because the vibration of these 4 walls are so intense, and the initiations that have gone on in there are so powerful. Like the Egyptian, the initiations that happen there, you are even just lying down, closing your eyes, having the most vivid visions and lessons and everything being laid out to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having actually really beautiful and really positive dreams and visions every time I closed my eyes. It was when I opened my eyes and I felt like I was having to protect myself. I was very much in survival mode because the kids would come in and try and take my food, and and I'm just there pregnant trying to have enough nourishment to grow my baby and feel safe. And so it was definitely difficult from that perspective.
And how long were you there again?
1 week.
Okay.
Which is a long time. No phone, no contact with anyone, you're just in it. And they were so adorable and loving and supportive, the people of the village. And I become really good friends with some of them, like the mama of the village, Mama Manuela, who is the wife of the man who leads everything. And so it was, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to go and that I went, but it was so hard. And I flew home, still in floods of tears, but relieved and so happy to be home and really shaken up, actually. But I saw that, my birth would be very powerful and like waves coursing over me, and, that my son was a very special little soul. So I get home and the rest of the pregnancy progresses. Oh my God, I went up to 100 kilos, which is like 220 pounds, 250 pounds. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot, from 60 kilos by the end of my pregnancy. And I was 41 plus 5 weeks. I had 2 ultrasounds because I had the anomaly one at 20 weeks as well. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, felt so repulsed by it. And the technician said, "Oh, do you mind if this trainee technician does it? Because he needs to learn." And I just said, "Absolutely not." He got so offended and had the real hump with me. But I said, "No, listen, do it as quickly as you can and then I'm done." So I knew, obviously, that it wasn't right, especially by my visceral reaction. But I hadn't, God, never again. Knowing what I know now. So 41 plus 5 weeks, I am enormous, so much retention, fluid retention. I'm exhausted. My knees hurt. I'm just not feeling good. I'm so swollen. I'm literally living on the sofa, sleeping on the sofa because I can't get in and off of my bed, which was
like a whale.
Literally like a beached whale. Watching reality TV and date shows and stuff on my laptop on repeat, up to pee every 15 minutes, day and night.
Were you miserable?
I was so miserable. I was just done. And my mum knew how strong I felt against induction and everything, and she just kept saying, "Why don't you just get a sweep?" Or what people say, everyone's saying, "Just go get a sweep, get this, get that, run up the stairs for me, run down, do this, do that." And she had all this pressure on me because this 3-year-long project that she had been co-curating called the Wisdom in Nature exhibition, which was happening in New York at Sotheby's Phillips. Yeah, Phillips. Sorry, I got confused. This art exhibition linked with the master in Gabon and all the different wisdom traditions of the different indigenous cultures around the world. All the masters were coming to do this amazing, powerful meditation at the UN. And there was the art exhibition, and I was involved with it too, to some degree. And we just couldn't believe that my due window was exactly when she needed to be in New York, and she's so wanted to be. But if it had been as predicted 40 weeks, she would have been fine. But I was almost 42 weeks by the time I gave birth. And I will say that my waters broke as she was on the airplane going to New York. it's like I needed her to go so that I could just not have that pressure on me of, just the time watching. So she goes off to meet up with all these amazing 12 masters from around the world, male and female. And I gave birth. I mean, I'll tell the story, but he was born at the same time that all the masters from around the world arrived in New York and met together. And she went down to breakfast, and one of the elders said, good morning, abuela, to her. And because they had heard that she had just had her first grandchild. And my mum said, oh, thank you. My grandson's name is Sage. And he said, that's the name of my grandson too.
Aww.
So it was just like a really beautiful little moment. But getting to that point was interesting. So very fast, very furious. My waters broke at 10:45 p.m. I was almost 42 weeks. My midwife was saying, no to induction, just hang in there, try and let go, break down. It's a good sign if you're on the verge of tears, and the whole time, because I really was. She's like, just stop holding yourself together, completely unfurl and let it out. And so I did. I had a complete meltdown and then let go of it. I was like, whatever, I'll just stay pregnant forever. That's just what's going to happen. And I ended up, my water started trickling. I went to pee and I wiped, and I noticed that liquid was just still coming out. And it was slightly tinged, kind of browny green. So I sent a photo of the toilet paper to her. And she said, yeah, it looks like a bit of meconium, but don't worry about it. And I was like, well, I'm not worried about it anyway. But she said, yeah, it's probably going to take a while for labor to start. So just go and meditate. I was so amped up. I was like, it's on, it's happening. Oh my God. I thought I was going to be pregnant forever. And I went to get Luke. He was in the middle of watching a movie. He was like, seriously, can you just come back? I'm in the middle of something. And I was so pissed off with him. I was like, you come next door.
He said, can you come back? I'm in the middle of something.
Yeah. I mean, we laughed about it. He was I know. We'd been arguing a lot because he was going to the skate park all the time, and I was worried he was going to twist his ankle and not be able to help me and walk the dogs and stuff. So we were like,
oh my God,
a bit butting heads at that point, but it was all good. It was nothing.
That's one of the funniest, rudest lines I've ever heard.
I was
Can you come back?
I was like, my labor is starting, but he'd heard from people in the mindful birthing course that, don't get ahead of yourself. It takes time. Just chill. Anyway, so I'm like, you come next door right now. So he comes next door and I'm like, listen, my waters have released. It's happening. I'm so excited. I don't know what to do. My heart is racing. And he's like, listen, just slow down. Anyway, 2 minutes later after he says slow down, I'm on all fours on the sofa, moaning through my first surge, and it's ripping through my body, so intense. I'm like, I think I was like, set the pool up, because the pool hadn't been set up. So he gets the pool set up, but my house looks so beautiful. Crystals, lights, candles, music, it's a really magical, red lit place to be in. And I really felt the thickness in the air. I was like, wow, this is so powerful. And I was just ready to dive to the depths. And, I'd done 2 initiations now in the past 9 months. I can do this. I've done the hard shit. Anyway, this was so much harder than anything I'd ever done before. And I was so caught off guard by that. And it just completely decimated me. And I just love that word because it is so accurate. I had 6 hours of labor from waters breaking to him being born, which is super quick for first birth. And the way it went is this. My waters broke, told the midwife. She came over when I told her, listen, it's on surge. My first surge came like 2 minutes apart from my second surge. And I can't even do anything in between them. It's so intense. I got in the water as soon as I could. And she brought her backup midwife, who was this lovely lady. She'd come over, I'd met her. She was present at one of my really close friends' home births. And it felt very safe and very beautiful. And so she comes, she was a retired midwife so that she could practice because of the legislation. So I thought that was cool. Anyway, I'm floating in the pool, roaring through everything, like up in the stars, needing to not move a muscle because it's so intense and I feel like I'm going to split open. And so I just stayed really still and just breathed and just traveled. And it was so cool. And I've just got like My Sweet Lord, George Harrison playing in the background. And I'm like singing along and I hear the midwives humming along. And it's this really, really beautiful, like romantic scene. And I'm just like, yeah, this is amazing. And I'm like, they probably think I'm not even in labor because I'm so quiet and still. But jokes on them. I am in full labor. It's so intense. Anyway, then I reached a point where maybe after 2 hours of being deadly still in the pool to get through it, I like a wild animal get out. And I'm like, I can't do this. And now I know I was in transition. But I just have this wild look in my eyes and I look at her, at my midwife and the assistant, and I'm like, listen, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. It's so intense. And my midwife just looked at me and she said, I can see you're really suffering. You don't have to. You can get an epidural at any time. You can get
what?
You can go to hospital. And I just was like,
what?
Yeah. And I was just like, really? Okay, listen, you don't need to suffer. I can see you're suffering. And she's like,
I'm raging right now. I forgot about this part. What the fuck?
And she said, let me check how far along you are, knowing that I was not into exams or anything. And then we can assess what to do. And I am feeling like wide-eyed and broken and like, maybe I can't do this. God, she said, okay.
Amelia.
And so I lie down on the sofa, which is impossible to do because I'm in so much pain. It's just so intense, like all in my back, I didn't really go into how intensely painful it was. So, fair enough. Maybe it did look like I was really suffering, but that is birth. Not birth is suffering, but birth is intense and it's wild. So yeah, it's going to look wild for some people. Anyway, so she checks me and she's like, oh, you're 10 centimeters, you can push. And so I was like, okay, great. This is going to be over soon then. And I'd completely checked out, by the way. The second I looked to her to say, what do I do? The second she said, you can go away or whatever to hospital, I checked out of my body. And I was just like, what do I do next? What position do I get? She was telling me what to do, but I was just going along with it like a sheep. I was like, yep, okay. She's like, get onto your back, like semi-reclined with Luke behind you, kind of propping you up like a chair and push. And so I got into that position.
Recreate the hospital.
Yeah. So I start pushing and I'm like, trying to push from my vagina. I'm like, because I'm not meant to push yet. So I'm just pushing. And she's like, no, you're doing it all wrong. And She goes, you need to push from your bum, like you're doing a poop. And she put her fingers on my perineum. She said, right there, that's the point. And so both midwives are saying to me, push, stop because I was going like, like really I was in so much intensity and it was very painful. And she said to me, stop vocalizing. You're losing all your power through your voice. Be quiet when you do it. So I then was completely silenced and pushing through my bum. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, it just doesn't feel right. And she said, go sit on the loo for a couple of surges. and that will help open you up. It was the most excruciating thing ever, sitting on the loo and pushing. I couldn't handle it. So I'm sitting on the loo pushing, and I'm like, I felt blind. I couldn't see, and they were around the corner, and my flat's all dark with just like little old candles and crystal lamps on. And I'm just like screaming, hello, is anybody there? I need help. I can't walk. I can't see. I'm like, help me. And so Luke like runs over, and they run over, and like I waddle over, like leaning on them back to the sofa. I go back into that position, and I'm pushing, and I completely was not in my body. I had no idea what was going on. I felt like I was dying. Like I did not know what was happening. And it was only 20 minutes from start of being told to push to when he emerged. It was really a lot faster than it could have been. But anyway, he was born 20 minutes after I started pushing, and I didn't know this, but Luke saw, and he was getting worried. She had to put her fingers in and do a maneuver on his shoulder because he had a supposed sticky shoulder. And he was born, and I was just in shock and just like looking at her pulling him out and her holding him. And then she said, take your baby. And I was just like, okay. And I took my baby. It was like I was dissociated. I just was not in my body. I thought, okay, this is too intense. So I had him on my chest. I don't remember any of this. I just know from seeing a photo. And he latched on within 10 minutes. And I just had him there, but it's all a blur. I do not remember it. And they were like, he is one big baby. Oh my God. And he was 11 pounds. He was 10 pounds 13, so almost 11 pounds. And
which is totally within the range of normal. That's not a weirdly sized child.
I'm 5'9", and I've got very broad hips. My husband's really tall. Everyone in my family's really tall. Like, it's no big deal. Anyway, I'm holding him, and they're like, wow, he's huge. Well, they hadn't weighed him, but they were just like, and I had no context or reference for how big a baby was supposed to be at birth. So I was like, oh, whatever. Anyway, I hobbled into the bed, and I was like, oh my God, that was so intense. But wow, I did it. I had my home birth. That was amazing. Oh my God. But I'm really in shock, and I can't even think about it. But by the next day, I was like, yeah, that was so amazing. Wow. Like, I'm so lucky. 20 minutes of pushing only. Wow. Like, I hear all these stories of women trying to have home births and do hypnobirthing and everything, and it always goes wrong. They always have to transfer, and they're really conscious and really spiritual. What keeps going wrong?
Right. And the bar is so low, right? Like, it's so easy to reframe it just because you didn't transfer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really proud of myself, and, I did it. But, oh my God, like the feeling I have in the pit of my stomach now, knowing what that felt like versus what it felt like to birth my second child in full sovereignty under the sunlight of just eternal love and light and power, and just, oh my God, it gives me chills even just thinking about it. It's a stark contrast. And they were both born in the same room, in the same place, pretty much, like a meter away from, and it's just polar opposite experience. So, yeah, I mean, the birth was what it was. I really romanticized it and believed it to be wonderful and powerful and transcendent. And it wasn't until just approaching his first birthday, Sage's first birthday, that I started to unpack. And I was on Freebirth Society membership, and I wrote my birth story out in the romanticized way. And I posted it because we were sharing birth stories. And then I started to listen to the podcasts and hear other women's experiences. And I was like, oh my God, okay, it didn't have to be this way. And that wasn't a powerful experience. Actually, my power was taken from me in that experience. And no, I don't have to be a victim about it, but wow, my eyes are opening. Wow. And it was really painful and powerful. And I raged at first, and then I made peace with it. And I was like, wow, this is such amazing information for me going forward, because I already felt the spirit of my next baby calling me. And I knew that we would start preparing our bodies for conception. Even though I was breastfeeding, I hadn't had a period. I hadn't, I just knew that our time was coming in the next 6 months or so. And yeah, we conceived our son 6 months later.
I wonder if you could, not what?
Sorry, not knowing it was our son, but
yeah,
different experience.
Yeah, that's true. We got to talk about that too. Yeah, I wonder if there's anything more to say there, because that's such a big deal, and this, wow, just like you said, romanticizing this birth. And so interesting how, if 2 years ago I had asked you to tell me your birth story, how different you would have told it. Right. Yeah. And this is the power of story, and the power of time, and the power of reflection, and the power of courage, and everything that your story embodies. So what I'm hearing is that in the first year, there was a pretty instant unconscious commitment to romanticize this story. And I'm kind of throwing this in, but it sounds like part of it is because you like all of us are really quite socialized to accept crumbs, like I always talk about, and that the bar is so low, that the fact that you had a home birth that was quick and probably received quite a bit of, praise or affirming, affirmation around that. So then it kind of creates its own narrative that you don't even question in the beginning. Right. And then, and this really highlights that we don't know how good it can be until it's there, or until there is some intuitive sense, or until there is critique, or until a big sister tells you. And I think your story really highlights that. So then at some point a year later, you have the courage to risk that story.
Yeah.
Right? Like to release that story as this romantic, beautiful thing. And not to say that there weren't parts of it. And of course, your son being born is beautiful, and all of these things. And obviously this is why it's complex, because I think most women aren't willing to, or haven't yet gotten willing to hold the complexity of, okay, I love my baby, I'm glad he's here, like all of these things. And wow, was that actually okay? Did that need to happen? Why did they, bring up epidurals at the end? Why did they disrespect me? Why did they put me on the couch? Why did they call shoulder dystocia? Like, why did these things have to happen? And there's so much courage, and there's so much intellectual and social risk to go there. So I'm wondering if there's anything more you want to say about that. Like, how was it in your marriage? How did it shift things for you? Because I know that then puts you on the path of free birth.
Yeah, no, it was really challenging actually at the time, because my husband felt like I was basically shitting all over the birth of my son by saying, oh no, I was, basically I had my power ripped from me for no reason. And I was pointing out I was critiquing it, and I was pointing out all the things that I now see that I hadn't seen before. And so for him, I'd gone from saying, oh, it was amazing, to the next day being like, no, it wasn't. It was awful in a lot of senses. And I feel quite traumatized by it, actually. And so he didn't really understand at first. And then with time, he did understand, but I just had to be doing my work and focusing on myself. And like in marriage, always, we come to things when we come to them. Like, I can't expect him to get things when I get them, and he can't always expect me to get things when he gets them. It's just about being human and fluid with each other. But ultimately, we have such a strong marriage that and so many years together that I know,
right. You've been together for a while.
It's okay. Yeah, that he'll come around. But imagine someone who didn't have that strong foundation. That would be really, really, really challenging if they didn't believe you or they weren't on board with your shift of perspective. But ultimately, all we can do is be true to ourselves, and everything lines up as it's supposed to divinely. And that's just the biggest lesson for me with everything to do with birth, mothering, love, everything. Just be true to yourself. But yeah, it's more complex than that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of things at once. Like that's what we were saying before we started recording, because when you start to critique this, what we often see is then it's like, oh shit, we have to question everything because it's all related, right? Because then we're starting to unpack our own internalized misogyny, our own, patriarchal conditioning, what is power, what is generating security, approval, and control within ourselves versus seeking it from outside of us. I mean, it's like Pandora's box. It's in the most beautiful and really intense way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
Okay. So then you're a changed woman, basically, the more that you start to question this and work it out. And
I see the light and I say to Luke, I'm having a free birth, this next baby. And he was still in the belief that if the midwives hadn't have been there, then there would have been a problem. Baby would have been stuck and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, they caused the problem. They told me to push before I was ready. They put me in a position. They had made interventions. They looked inside of me. That was the problem. And if I was in my own autonomy and listening to my body, then my body would have moved. I would have gone into different positions and everything would have happened differently. So it took him a day to come around. And then he's like, yeah, okay. He's always got my back really after a day. And so yeah, it took about 5 or 6 months of consciously calling in our baby before he was conceived, because I was breastfeeding around the clock still and I wasn't willing to stop. And when my son turned 18, when Sage turned 18 months, I decided, okay, I just have to stop because this baby has to come in and I know that I have to make space. So we did this really beautiful ceremony to signify the end of our breastfeeding journey and then the start of him receiving this nourishment in other ways from me. And I conceived our baby unknowingly without even bleeding. So the first ovulation after stopping, it must have been like 1 or 2 weeks after stopping nursing, after 5 months of trying and weaning, night weaning, doing the whole thing. So that was cool. And I had such a powerful conscious conception journey with this baby of visions and just really leaning into surrender and wanting things so badly to be now, and they can't be now. They have to be at another time that I don't know about. So it was really painful at times, but just part of the course for conscious conception or just conception. Right. I feel like it's about completely stripping off any sense of control. And so it was very, very beautiful and powerful. And then the first 4 months of my pregnancy were so intense, like being back in Gabon, really. Maybe worse, because it was not 1 week, it was 4 months of just every single defect of character being brought to my awareness about myself and completely deconstructing my identity and my ego and everything. Just
that's when we met too.
Yeah, it was.
You showed up after puking on the plane,
oh my God.
And it was so cute because we in Freebirth Society, we've laughed about this a lot because we've all become internet friends and we Zoom all the time and we're like real friends. But the one mystery left is that we don't know how tall anyone is. And you show up at my house and you're like 9 feet tall and I'm like 2 feet tall. And we hugged. And I like came up like below your breast. We were like,
that was such a mind fuck, Emily. I thought you were going to be so tall because you have such a big personality.
I'm going to ruin it for everyone. I'm 5'1". I'm really short. And you were
I'm
like
5'9".
Yeah. And you were like hugging me. You were like, you're like a baby.
Oh my God. That's so funny.
It was awesome. But wait, there was something else. Oh yeah. I wanted you to speak to that just kind of the just really interesting journey and let go of really thinking you were calling in a girl.
Yeah.
And you didn't find out, obviously, for sure, until, spoiler alert, boy pops out. So you had such a really beautiful just experience with kind of that, with letting that go and calling it in and like you said, control and then letting go of control. And it seemed like from the outside as your friend that letting go of this clarity that it was a girl was a really big part of the journey.
Yes. So I had all these communications with this spirit baby that was very clearly a girl and gave me her name. And it was just like this really beautiful, magical thing. And I'd always dreamed for a daughter. So it just felt really exciting. And then one of our sisters in the community had the same thing happen to her. She gave birth to a boy after having such strong connection with this girl. And the name was given, everything. And then when I saw that she posted that she'd given birth to a boy, my stomach did a flip. I was like, no, oh my God, that could be me. This whole story that I have created about control and this happening, this is how it's going to be, could completely be shattered. And I'd feel broken because everything that I think I know, I don't know. And so it really scared me hearing her story. And she shared a bit about it. And then I did a post in the network being like, listen, I really want to know, because if I'm thinking it's a girl the whole pregnancy and then I give birth to a boy, how am I going to come to terms with that? Because I've got such a strong bond with this girl's spirit. And it was your comment on that post that just hit the nail in the coffin, because I was like, okay, done. I don't need to ever come back to this. It was such a powerful comment, and I can't remember. I screenshotted it, saved somewhere. It was just like, I don't know, you must have channeled it. It was just exactly what I needed to hear. It was like, this is the journey. This is what it's about. Not knowing, the letting go, the mystery, lean into the mystery, let go of the story. This spirit baby that you believed, she could be ushering in a different spirit. It doesn't mean anything. This is the spirit world. It's completely fluid. Like, come on, just let it all go. And I was like, okay. It was so easy. I was like, okay, I don't need to know. And you were like, listen, just remind me. Like, I'll ask to remind you if you struggle again. Because I was going to do the blood test just to find out without doing the ultrasound, because I was very staunchly against ultrasounds, knowing what I then knew. And I was like, no, I don't want to know. This is part of the magic, the not knowing. And I never needed to be reminded. I was then completely on board. But then I went through a whole other thing of like maybe thinking I wasn't even pregnant. That was hard in my first few months, because I would be like so bloated, and then my stomach would not be bloated and go down. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm fooling myself and I'm not actually pregnant, because I did one test, but I never had a period. Like, how do I know? Like, how do I know until something goes? And so that was that was really the most painful bit. And I really felt shame around it as well. Like my stomach isn't showing as much as it should be. Like, people are commenting like, oh, you're tiny, you're so lucky, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they weren't saying that at the end because I was enormous. But yeah, that was really a head fuck, just being in the not knowing. And I really leaned into it. And Yeah.
You have to. Like, I mean, it's like the whole point, right?
But no one does, Emily.
I can't, I mean,
we are.
Right, exactly. But it's such an illusion.
We are literally the tiniest percentage of people who don't, because society is all about control and needing to know. And if I have the illusion that I know, then everything's going to be okay because I'm in control. It's like, if I know it's a boy, then I'll be okay because I'll come to terms with it before. And it's like, no, just forget everything and jump off a cliff and just trust that you'll be carried.
And when people think they know and then they're wrong, they fall so much harder. You know, I've been at births where the freaking ultrasound tech inaccurately labels the sex. And so I've been at births where they were like, oh yeah, it's a girl, pink room. They do the whole thing. And then a freaking boy pops out, or vice versa. I've seen it both ways. And it like rocks them totally understandably, like way more than if they had been in the mystery of it. Or obviously the most intense example is, the bypass of not contending with death and thinking that you can just go in and get an ultrasound and be like, oh yeah, everything's perfect. And like, as if somebody else could tell you who and how your baby is and all of that. And I find consistently women who experience loss outside the system, just, there's like, I don't know how to say it. These are kind of weird words to choose, but there's like less of a fall. It's like they've contended with it. It's a part of the reality of possibilities in a different way. And I'm not trying to suggest to anyone listening that women who birth in the system are just getting out of the work. I think that there's always work for all of us, and we're all like gauging what we're up for and and everyone's kind of at their own pace around it, and there's no one way to do it and all of that. And this whole thing you keep talking about of leaning into the mystery and that it never stops, because so first it's the sex of the baby and the attachment to that, and then you break through that, and then there's another layer of control and another layer, and am I even pregnant? And it is so heady and it's so decimating. But what's on the other side of that is the possibility for a rebirth that I really don't know if you could have gotten without total sovereignty, right?
It's like I had to take 100% responsibility for my birth, for my baby, for myself, in order, and I'm not saying everyone has to do this, this was just my experience in this birth, in order for me to be fully in tuned and connected to my baby and my body, I couldn't look outside of myself for anything, because it's like I felt like then I would lose the thread. I needed to be with myself. And so I was. I mean, I didn't see anyone for the whole pregnancy. I did my own prenatal care, bone broth, herbal infusions, salt baths, massages, rest, naps, journaling, a lot of really heavy spiritual work on myself. Just, I would finish one batch of spiritual work and then my baby would be like, okay, now I'm taking you down this other path and it's really intense. And I'd be like, what? So I just knew this baby was here to accelerate me and elevate me. And I just had to say yes to everything that I was being given, like all the clues. And I would just take one clue and then be taken to the next. And I was in synchronicity and in flow. And I really trusted. And I wasn't in fear at all, apart from once when I spoke to my old midwife about getting the birth notification done, because she had helped other free birthing mothers do it. And she just dropped into the conversation, what if it's a big baby again? What if it has shoulder dystocia? What are you going to do? And then it planted the seed of fear. And I was like, and then I had a whole load of work on shoulder dystocia to do and letting go of that. And I did actually well.
Also, you didn't have shoulder dystocia with Sage.
I had sticky shoulder with parentheses, and it wasn't because it was man-made.
But that's not even, sticky shoulders isn't even a thing. That's like the swollen, that's like the, what's it called? The anterior lip, the is that what it's called? Yeah. The little extra anterior lip, like right before. It's like, it's all just, blech.
So anyway, I did a lot of work on myself. Literally every day it was something new, and it was so intense and it was exhausting. I was so exhausted, but also felt amazing. And I had no idea how pregnant I was either, because I'd never bled. I didn't know when I'd ovulated. I hadn't had a period in years. And so I was just like, well, the pregnancy test I did, by the way, I didn't even guess that I was pregnant until I was possibly 8 to 12 weeks pregnant, or 8 to 10 weeks pregnant. I just didn't know. And so it was all a mystery. I was like, I could be 36 weeks. I could be 42 weeks. I have no idea. I was huge by the end, bigger than I was for Sage, with a lot of fluid retention. And I hadn't gained as much weight either this time round. And so I was expecting like a huge baby. I was totally up for it, whatever. When I had a whole list of things for Luke to do for the birth. I was so prepared, literally, like everything was in a cupboard to make my room beautiful. The music playlist, the labor aid with raspberry leaf tea and raw honey and magnesium and everything just all set out. A birthday cake, a keto birthday cake for Luke to bake for when the baby's born, so we can sing happy birthday. Like it was just all to the T set out. My mom was going to pick up Sage. I like envisioned it being in the middle of the night. Everything that I envisioned, by the way, in my birth vision that I read out in the village prenatals that I'd attended, and in my mother blessing, which was so magical that I had thrown for me, came true. Basically, it was exactly, I mean, it was a bit faster than I'd imagined, but it was so powerful having that clear intention of how I saw my birth and having it manifest. It was just like, and I did the same for postpartum. I was so detailed about how I wanted my postpartum to be. And, you know, as much as it could, it did manifest. But then we went into lockdown like 2 weeks later. So that was its own story. Anyway, my waters broke at 2 a.m. I woke up to pee into an elimination communication potty that I got for my baby when he was born, but I just kept it by the bed because I was peeing so much and I just couldn't make it to the bathroom. I'd have to like walk over mattresses. Our whole floor is a mattress in our bedroom because we all co-sleep. So I just couldn't do it. So literally from 4 weeks or however many, 8 weeks pregnant, I was peeing in the potty by the bed because it was just so much pee the whole time. And we have the sound of rain in the background. So luckily it wouldn't wake up my husband, the sound of me peeing in the middle of the night. But anyway, pee and then fluid just keeps gushing slowly but surely. I get back into bed onto like a washable waterproof pad that I had. And I'm like, wow, it's happening. Oh my God. I listened to Yolanda's birth affirmations, which was so beautiful. And I'd been listening to them through the pregnancy as well as doing the sovereign birth meditations of Nancy's on Freebirth Society, which I highly recommend. And I was like, wow, it's happening. It's raining outside. It's raining inside with the sleepy sounds.
Yeah, you're peeing over here. And sorry, I didn't get clear on this, but it was just intended to have you and Luke and Sage. Like, what was the setup?
So it was intended just me and Luke, and for my mum to pick up Sage because he was 2 years and 3 months at the time. He's so high energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I was open to him being there, but I wanted to be able to let go, and I just needed the backup. Mum lives 5 minutes away, so she was on call. And so an hour passes after my water broke. I posted on the membership being like, okay, my water's broken. I think it's going to come quickly. Some people were like, yeah, mine took 24 hours to settle in, get comfortable. And I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know, it's happening.
Bite your tongue.
Yeah. But I was open to it happening, of course. But I just, you know, really knew it was on. Went next door, started setting things up. Didn't wake up Luke yet because I just wanted some space to myself. And literally, I light a candle on my birth altar, try to light it, and I'm just floored by my first surge. It was so intense. It felt like I was 10 hours into labor, the first surge. I was like, oh my God. Ah. And I really muted myself because I didn't want to wake up Sage yet. Because I was like, okay, this is going, it's 2 a.m. I want him to sleep longer before mum picks him up. Anyway, after half an hour of trying to keep my cool, I got Luke. I was like, listen, it's happening. You know, set everything up now. Mm-hmm. So he went down, checking off his list. And I got into the pool as soon as I could. And then I was like, I can't hold it back anymore. This has got to come out. And I was just like roaring, screaming, wild animal. I mean, Luke was looking at me like bless him, he did say at one point, which you're going to get annoyed about. He was like, do you remember last time you were so like quiet and still inside the pool and it really helped you?
Oh my God, we need to like create a book of what men say during birth.
Yeah. No, he thought that the police were going to come. Like I was shrieking. It was just, I had to. It was so intense. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try doing that because actually, if it would help, then great. So I tried to like do some deep breathing. I was like no. And I was like screaming again. Anyway, Sage was woken up, of course. He comes next door. He's just staring at me. And we'd been watching Orgasmic Birth, the documentary earlier that day. And they sounded so different to me. And so he's looking at me like, oh my God, that does not sound like what we've been watching. Like the videos of Jinty's birth and all these beautiful births, very like much more peaceful. And so he's like, oh, Dada. And he like went into the kitchen to make the labor aid with Luke because he was a bit taken aback by my sounds. My mom was on her way. She picked Sage up and 5 minutes, she thought I was in like very, very early labor because she arrived and she heard me. She's never been in a birth situation. So she didn't understand. She needs to respect the space, be quiet. She comes in being like, I brought the eggs, you know, because I asked Luke to tell her to bring eggs so he could bake. And I'm just thinking, shut up. I'm about to have a baby. Come on. But I didn't say anything. And she's like getting Sage ready to leave. And I'm just thinking, leave, please leave in my mind. And, you know, roaring through my surges. She leaves with Sage. Luke takes him down. We're two floors up in a mansion block in the back from the front on the street. When he puts Sage in the car, he can hear me. And it's 5 a.m. So from my first surge, it was an hour and a half from my first surge to me giving birth. And
whoa.
Yeah, it was so quick.
I didn't realize it was that quick. Damn, girl,
and I'm not embellishing it. It was literally from the very first one to his emergence. Luke came up from taking Sage down to the car, thinking that the whole building's going to call the police because I sound so wild, but no one even heard. And he comes in and I'm literally like, my body goes into fetal ejection reflex as he comes in. And I'm like, oh my God, my baby, I'm having my baby. And my whole body is just like opening and like a train like shooting through me. Or I mean, I can't even, it's just the wildest, most incredible, crazy feeling. And Luke's like, I forgot to film. I said, I really wanted him to film it. So he's like shaking, fumbling around, setting up the camera just on his phone because he hadn't set up the GoPro or anything because it was so quick. And he caught just the very last bit of me pulling River out in two surges. One, and his head was born and I'm feeling his head. I'm like, oh my God, his head is here. Oh my goodness. And then he shoots out and I just pick him up and I'm just in absolute ecstasy, bliss, amazement. Like there is no drug like it. And I've taken all the drugs. It's like no comparison. And I just laid back and I had him on my chest and I'm just like crying, looking down at him, like smiling, laughing, crying in awe. And he is taking his time to come to and clear his airways. And I'm just like, I know in my bones he is here and he's safe. And I didn't know he was a he. I didn't even check for like 15 minutes. I didn't care. I'm just holding him. And Luke, I had prepped him and he was super cool about it, like as he should be. But a lot of men I know wouldn't be. Not to touch me, not to come near me, not to talk to me, just to allow me the dignity of this time with my baby. And he did. He was so respectful of that. And the only way I know how he felt or what he was like in this moment is because he was filming me and then he just turned the camera on himself just to show, and he's like bawling with tears and he never cries. And that was
the cutest video.
And so then he turns it back onto me and I just want to say my first birth, I remember nothing. And I thought that was normal, that you'd be really out of it after such an intense thing. I remember everything. I was the most lucid and in my body I've ever been, whilst being the most high and in bliss that I've ever been. And I can remember every single bit of the feelings. So, I mean,
it says a lot.
It is out of this world. Like undisturbed physiological birth. And then with that time, with no one coming near me, no one looking at me, talking to me, touching me, of just soaking in my baby and being like, wow, we did it. We did it together. This was us. Like, wow, we are the best team in the world. And and then the beautiful chorus song, Thank You for Your Blessings, came on and I was just singing it to him. And he was like listening to me. And it was just so, so insanely beautiful. And then when I was ready, I looked at Luke and I was like, you can come in now. And so he came in and he was like so sweet about like, didn't want to touch me because he didn't feel bad. And I'm like, you can touch me. He's like touching me and touched River's head. And we didn't know it was River yet, but he said, I thought it was a girl the whole pregnancy. And so did he, and everyone told him it was a girl. And he's like, is it a girl or a boy? And I said, I don't know. And I really casually just like looked. He was like, it's a boy. And he was like, oh my God, like his face is so classic in the video. But me, I'm just like so blasé about it. I'm like, yeah, it's a boy. Like, of course it is. It just did not matter. I did not care. It made so much sense that it was a boy, that it was him. And I just said, hello, River. And I didn't even know what I would call him if it was a boy. We didn't have a name, but it just came out. It was like, that's your name. And very, 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 very powerful. Got out of the water maybe half an hour afterwards because I was having such strong after pains, which I hadn't had in my first birth, and got into bed and was nursed. He didn't latch on probably the first hour. And with Sage, it was 10 minutes in. So, I mean, it was just like, I was just waiting for him to be ready. I wasn't worried. And then I tried to birth the placenta, but it wasn't ready yet. And I think 2 hours after giving birth, I kind of squatted over a bowl over my bed, and River was held by Luke just in front of me, just because he was obviously attached to me. And I just said, I release, and I coughed. And the placenta, I thought the placenta was born. I was like, oh, that was easy. And I like laid back, and Luke was like, why is the cord still attached to you?
You're like, oh shit.
It was just a bit of membrane to like get back into position. And I birthed the placenta, eventually, but it was no big deal. And then we just stayed in bed, and it was super dreamy, and called my mum, FaceTimed her. And then she brought Sage back a few hours later after that. And we did a cord burning ceremony with Sage with the beeswax candles, and my mum held the candles for a bit as well, and Luke and me, and it was just very, very special. And then Luke had been baking the cake during those hours' time. He was so adrenalized by what he'd seen and witnessed that he was like baking in the kitchen. Sage brought the cake and blew out the candle for River and sung happy birthday. And then I just spent, oh my God, that first night, Sage went and spent the night at my mum's house, which I was really grateful for, just because I needed to process and integrate. And I felt like I was on like a heroic dose of mushrooms. I was literally tripping balls.
That's how I felt my first night too. I was tripping my face off for like at least the whole night.
Yeah, all night, seeing space invaders and all sorts of things, gnomes and mushrooms coming out at me. And I was just like lying there. But I was loose. I mean, I was safe to be with my baby, but I was just like, whoa. Totally. And I didn't want to wash because I smelled amazing. Luke was like, oh my God, you smell amazing. And like this primal, earthy smell. And obviously your baby smells amazing. Like if you don't wash them, like, oh my God, I just loved. I was like lying in bed, smelling my armpits, being like, oh my God, it smells so good. I wish I could bottle this. And then I was like, I'm really tripping out. I'm just gonna, I think I didn't tear, nothing happened. Like I literally felt virginal after the birth. Like no, not even a graze. It was just so great. But I felt like a tiny bit cystitis-y, which is something that I've had recurrent for my whole life. And my remedy for when I feel like a UTI coming on is just sitting in a really hot bath for a second, for like 5 minutes. So I went and did that. And I'm like lying in the bath, like seeing things coming out of the walls, and then go back into bed. And I'm like, okay, that was really intense. Oh my God. And then, just postpartum bubble. I had a 2-hour postpartum massage the next day with this amazing woman who specializes in that. And she came and did the Arvigo abdominal massage, and River's at my side in bed. And it was just, exactly how I'd pictured. And then the whole Corona lockdown stuff happened, and all support was cut off, and cleaner gone, no meals, like everything just went radio silent. Like my mum as well, because my dad's older and they were worried about, being around the kids, being around Sage, because he went to a playgroup and whatnot, when everyone really believed that there was a virus to catch. So yeah, that was definitely interesting shift. And Luke was amazing and just did everything and cooked and cleaned and looked after Sage. And even through having no support, I stuck to my plan and stayed in bed and stayed with my baby. And I just did nap time and bedtime with Sage at the foot of my bed. And that was the way that we could connect and bond through, me suddenly not being there with him all day, every day. I'll just say that it was like emotionally such a roller coaster, even with like the most beautiful, perfect birth. I was way more emotional and unstable and felt unhinged at times than I was even at Sage's birth. And I think it's because obviously there was a lot going on in the world at the time, and I was just watching a lot of things that were very dark, and I was just being exposed to things, or I was allowing myself to be exposed to things that were really just dark. And so I was contending with that whilst knowing that I share the same nervous system with my baby, and how important it is for me to hold myself in a high vibration. So I was going through this like up and down constantly, of like pulling myself back up and then being pulled back down, and just feeling like moments of anxiety. Like he was 8 pounds and Sage was 11 pounds. And so I had never really held such a small baby, even though that's just a normal weight. And I would like be nursing him and be afraid that I was going to snap his neck, and just things would come into my head like that, which I'd never had before. And so I just want to like normalize that as well. Like that was just part of my path with him, and I grew out of it, and it was no big deal. I didn't pathologize it. I just allowed it to be, and I spoke to and that is why wise women around and spiritual anchor points are so important, like as important as nourishing food and rest postpartum. Because if I didn't have that support, I could have gone into some kind of postpartum anxiety thing, I think, or depression, whatever they call it. And I didn't, because I looked after myself and I was very committed to doing that. And I had the resources, and I was very fortunate to. But
yeah, and I think we're, like you're saying, I mean, we're so isolated. When we are isolated, it's so easy to take our thoughts really seriously, you know, and the truth is they're not even really ours. They're like radio frequencies, you know, they're just like thoughts. They're just passing through. And I think in isolation, those thoughts can feel a lot more serious. Yeah. It's a good word for it. Instead of just a weird dark thought passing through, you know, it doesn't really need to mean anything.
Yeah. No, it's really full on. And I just want to end saying something really beautiful that I've experienced a few months later postpartum, but it was my birthday, my 30th birthday. And I had a hospital birth with induction and epidural, and the way I was born. And, you know, separated from my mother at birth to be washed and weighed and all that stuff. And she was given a sleeping pill that night and all this stuff. So this was in Paris 30 years ago. And so on my birthday, I was with my mother and I said to her, will you write what your dream birth would be for my birth? And will you share it with me in a little ceremony under this beautiful tree in the house we were staying at in the countryside? And so she did, and she shared it, walking me through. We had a candlelit river was lying next to me on the blanket. She walked me through the most healing, beautiful free birth that she chose for herself, like under this waterfall, in a lagoon, in this forest, with like the most beautiful warm air blowing on her. And she gave birth to me in the water, pulled me up, just my dad present, and he was just quiet and supportive. And then she went and lay on a pillowed duvet and birthed a placenta onto a gold tasseled cushion. And we just lay there nursing in the warm wind. And so it was. We rewrote my birth story, and we both felt so profoundly changed from that moment. And I just wanted to offer that as a really beautiful tool for anyone to practice for their own births or for, you know, traumatic births of their children, because I really believe, like, on a spiritual, as above, so below, like something changed when we told the story. And felt full circle.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's an intentional, not rewrite, but like a reimagining, and that creates a marker of ritual in your system, you know. So obviously you like know in the physical planes that is not how the physical story of your birth was, and yet you both took the time to imagine and step inside of another dream and like feel what that would be like, and let that be in your system. It makes me think about, you know, when we do menarche reclamation ceremonies, you know, where you rewrite, you know, you walk through an intentional, you know, respectful ritual of your menarche, but you do it as an adult because most likely whatever happened to you when you first bled was fucked up or was dismissed or whatever. And it's kind of similar. It's like creating that marker in your system to imagine a new story it's so beautiful, and it's so playful and so creative, and it's so feminine. It's so female to do something like that. I love that.
Yeah. It was way more powerful than either of us thought it was going to be. We thought it was just going to be this like beautiful thing, but we both felt we were both crying and felt like floored by it, actually.
But this is ritual, like this is it's so beautiful. Yeah. And what a sweet, easy thing that any of us could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so proud of you. And what a gift you've given to yourself and your family. And I really, really honor your courage and your willingness to create something new.
Thank you, my love.
Love you so much.
You too. Bye.
And that's it for today, my sisters. Check out everything we do, including one-on-one and group coaching, learn about our private membership, in-person retreats, and more on freebirthsociety.com. Our online courses are on freebirthsocietycourses.com, including our flagship course, The Complete Guide to Free Birth. Don't miss the Radical Birthkeeper School if you're ready to become the authentic midwife that women are searching for. Together we rise, and the revolution starts inside each of us. Our opening song is by Shyla Ray. And now, I'll leave you with our Freebirth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts. Keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back